The water fell in cold sheets from the corroded showerheads, each drop hitting concrete like a small accusation. Steam filled the communal shower area of the Naval Special Warfare Training Facility, turning the late afternoon light into something ghostly, something that made harsh truths easier to speak. Lieutenant Eleanor Grace Reynolds stood under the third showerhead from the left, her small frame tensed against the cold. At 5 feet 4 inches, she barely reached the shoulders of most women in the facility. Her auburn hair, normally tied back in a regulation bun, now hung wet against her pale neck. Bruises colored her ribs in shades of purple and yellow, souvenirs from 14 hours of combat training that had left stronger candidates gasping. She kept her green eyes down, focused on the drain, where water spiraled away like her dignity had been doing for 91 days straight. 13 weeks. That was how long she had endured this particular hell. 13 weeks of being the weakest link, the diversity hire, the mistake that proved women did not belong in the SEAL program. 13 weeks of lies. The whispers started before she even finished rinsing the sweat from her face. They always started with whispers. 3 women stood at the far end of the shower area, making no effort to lower their voices below the sound of running water. Sloan Ashcroft towered at the center of the trio, all 6 feet and 10 inches of her, with blonde hair that somehow looked perfect, even after a day that had broken lesser candidates. Her father had been a Marine general. Her grandfather had stormed the beaches at Normandy. She wore that legacy like armor, and she wielded it like a weapon. To her left stood Harper Kincaid, 5'7", and built like a college athlete, which she had been before trading softball for something that actually mattered. She had kind eyes when Sloan was not around. But Sloan was always around. Bridget Thorne completed the trinity on Sloan's right. Red hair, freckles across a face that belonged on a recruiting poster, and a conviction that women in combat roles represented the decline of American military excellence. She believed this with religious fervor, despite being a woman in a combat training program herself. The irony was lost on her. It usually was. "Look who decided to show up," Sloan said, her voice carrying the particular quality of someone who knew exactly how far sound traveled in a tiled room. "I was starting to think Reynolds washed out already. Figured she finally realized this isn't a charity case program." Elle continued, washing her movements methodical. Soap, rinse, repeat. Do not respond. Do not give them ammunition. Let performance speak. Let the mission continue. Harper laughed, that uncomfortable laugh of someone who wanted approval more than she wanted to be kind. "She's barely bigger than my little sister. How's she supposed to carry a wounded teammate? How's she going to handle actual combat situations?" Elle's hands did not shake as she reached for the shampoo. Muscle memory took over. She had trained her body to ignore fear, to push through pain, to function when every nerve screamed for rest. She could train it to ignore words too. Words were just sounds, just air pushed through vocal cords. They meant nothing. Except they did. They always did. Bridget stepped closer, water from her shower spraying in Elle's direction. "It's not just about size, though, is it? It's about standards. This program has standards for a reason. When you lower those standards to be politically correct, you put everyone at risk. You get people killed." The words hung in the steam between them. "You get people killed." Elle turned off her shower. The silence that followed felt louder than the running water. She reached for her towel with deliberate calm, wrapping it around herself with the same precision she used to field strip a weapon in the dark. Every movement controlled, every response measured. "Hey, Reynolds," Sloan called out, her voice dripping with false sweetness that could strip paint from bulkheads. "Maybe you should consider transferring to a different program. Something more suited to your abilities. I hear the Navy needs more administrative assistance. You could type reports, answer phones. Wouldn't that be more comfortable?" The comment drew snickers from Harper and Bridget. A few other women in the shower area glanced over, their faces carefully neutral. Nobody spoke up. Nobody ever spoke up. In training environments like this, keeping your head down was survival. Getting involved in someone else's fight was how you became the next target. Elle wrapped the towel tighter and finally looked up, meeting Sloane's eyes directly. For a moment, the shower area fell silent, except for the sound of running water and the distant echo of men's shouting cadence on the obstacle course outside. In that moment, Elle could have told them everything. She could have pulled rank, could have revealed that the struggling trainee they mocked was actually their superior officer. could have explained that the woman who barely passed the fitness tests was holding back, that the shooter who missed targets did so deliberately, that the swimmer who struggled in the pool had actually saved Harper's life 6 hours ago without any of them knowing. She could have told them she was Lieutenant Commander Eleanor Grace Reynolds, commanding officer of SEAL Team 7, 8 years of active service, 47 combat missions, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor, a Silver Star from a classified operation in Syria that had saved 18 American lives, a Purple Heart from Fallujah when shrapnel had torn through her left shoulder and she had kept fighting for 3 more hours. She could have told them their mockery meant nothing because she had already earned her place in a way none of them had yet comprehended. Instead, she said, "I appreciate your concern, but I'm exactly where I need to be." Her voice was steady, calm, the voice of someone who had nothing to prove because she had already proven everything that mattered. Sloane rolled her eyes, the gesture exaggerated for their audience. "Right. Tell me what makes you think you can handle missions that have broken men twice your size. What makes you think you deserve to be here?" Elle considered her words carefully. She could have mentioned her previous military experience, her specialized training, the classified operations she had completed in 3 different theaters of war. She could have described the time she had led a rescue operation through a Taliban stronghold, or the night she had held a dying Marine in her arms while calling in a medevac under heavy fire, or the morning she had received word that her father, Army Ranger Colonel William Reynolds, had died in Panama when she was 5 years old, and how that loss had shaped every decision she made afterward. Instead, she simply said, "I guess we'll find out during training, won't we?" Harper interjected, stepping forward with the confidence of someone who had never actually been in combat. Training is one thing, but real combat is completely different. When bullets start flying and lives are on the line, do you really think your teammates are going to trust someone who looks like she should be teaching kindergarten? The insults continued to flow, each one designed to chip away at confidence and resolve. The 3 women seemed to feed off each other's energy, their comments becoming increasingly harsh and personal. This was not new. This was not even the worst day. But it was the day that Elle's photographic memory noticed something important. As Sloane turned to grab her gear bag from the bench, Elle saw the combination lock on her locker click open. 3 numbers. 17-33-9. The unconscious muscle memory of fingers that had opened that lock 10,000 times. Elle filed the information away. Everything was intelligence. Everything mattered. "I bet she's only here because of some diversity quota," Bridget said with a laugh that echoed off the tiles. "The Navy probably needed to check a box for female representation, so they grabbed the first woman who could do a few push-ups." Elle finished drying off and began getting dressed. She moved with deliberate calm, refusing to let their words rush her or show any sign of the frustration building inside. Her movements were economical, practiced. Sports bra, undershirt, uniform trousers, each article of clothing a layer of armor against the world. "You know what the worst part is?" Sloane continued, warming to her theme like a prosecutor who had found her stride. "When she washes out, and she will wash out, she'll probably blame it on discrimination or sexism. She'll never admit that she simply wasn't good enough." The locker room had grown more crowded now as the day shift ended and women filtered in from various training evolutions. Some glanced curiously at the confrontation. Others pointedly ignored it, suddenly very interested in their own lockers and gear. Rachel Dunmore, a quiet woman from Colorado, caught Elle's eye for just a moment. Something like sympathy flickered there. Then she looked away. Elle had learned not to expect allies. This was not personal. This was survival. Everyone in this program was fighting their own battle against impossible standards and crushing expectations. Nobody had energy left over for someone else's fight. "I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking," Harper added, raising her voice slightly to ensure her words carried to the other women in the area. "We all know she doesn't belong here. It's nothing personal. It's just reality." Elle laced up her boots with the same precision she used for everything. Each movement was a meditation, a small victory of control over chaos. She was indeed smaller than everyone here, younger looking despite being 28 years old. Her features, green eyes, auburn hair, pale skin that showed every bruise, had led many people throughout her life to underestimate her capabilities. She had learned to use that. The underestimation had become a weapon in her arsenal, sharp and reliable. Standing now, she slung her gym bag over her shoulder and faced the 3 women who had spent months questioning her presence. The height difference was comical. Sloane had nearly 8 inches on her. But Elle had learned a long time ago that height meant nothing when bullets flew. Size meant nothing when decisions had to be made in microseconds. Physical strength meant nothing compared to the strength it took to endure this kind of psychological warfare day after day without breaking. You seem to know a lot about what everyone else is thinking. Elle said, her voice quiet but clear. But maybe you should focus more on your own performance instead of worrying about mine. Sloane stepped closer, invading Elle's personal space with the casual aggression of someone who had never faced real consequences for intimidation. My performance, I've been at the top of every training exercise since we started. I've never failed a physical test or missed a target on the shooting range. Can you say the same? Elle looked up at the taller woman without flinching. My presence here speaks for itself. It tells me that the instructors are going easy on you, Sloane replied, but that won't last forever. Eventually, they'll have to hold you to the same standards as everyone else. And when that happens, you'll be gone. The tension in the shower area was palpable now. Other women had stopped their conversations to watch the confrontation unfold. Elle could feel dozens of eyes on her, waiting to see how she would respond to the increasingly aggressive challenges, waiting to see if the quiet one would finally break. Instead of escalating, Elle simply nodded and said, "I guess we'll see." She turned and walked toward the exit, leaving the 3 women standing in the steamy shower area. Their voices followed her into the hallway like ghosts. "That's right, walk away," Sloane called after her. "Just like you'll walk away from this program when it gets too hard." Elle stepped into the corridor and took a deep breath of air that did not smell like chlorine in judgment. The concrete walls of the training facility stretched in both directions, painted the institutional beige that military bureaucrats seemed to think was calming. Motivational posters lined the walls, images of SEALs emerging from dark water, of helicopters silhouetted against orange sunsets, of warriors and standing together with weapons and brotherhood. She had seen those same posters in a dozen different facilities. They always showed men. They always would. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight brought something she had not anticipated: the arrival of the one man who could see through her disguise. She would need to make a choice: trust him or eliminate him as a threat to her operation. That decision could wait until after she cleared her head. What her critics did not know, what none of them suspected, was that Lieutenant Eleanor Reynolds had secrets that would change everything they thought they knew about her. Secrets that were 6 hours old and growing more relevant by the minute. The morning had begun in darkness, as mornings in SEAL training always did. 0430 Reveille, the sky still black, stars fading against the coming dawn. Elle had been awake since 0400, her internal clock calibrated by years of pre-dawn operations. She had learned long ago that the extra 30 minutes before official wake-up gave her an advantage time to prepare mentally, to armor herself for another day of deliberate mediocrity. The obstacle course waited in the gray pre-dawn light like a sleeping monster. Wooden barriers scarred by thousands of boots, rope nets that had caught and held countless bodies, a climbing wall that had broken fingers and pride in equal measure. And beyond it all, the underwater tunnel, 50 feet of submerged darkness, that separated the determined from the defeated. Master Chief Garrett Morrison stood at the starting line, his weathered face impassive as granite. At 53, he had spent 30 years in the Navy, most of it in special warfare. His voice could cut through steel plating and tropical storms. His standards were absolute. His respect was earned or not at all. "Listen up." Morrison's voice brought 72 candidates to immediate attention. "Today's evolution will test your ability to work as a team under extreme pressure. You'll be divided into squads of 6. Each squad will complete a series of obstacles while carrying a wounded teammate." Elle listened intently as Morrison explained the rules. One member of each team would play the role of an injured soldier who could not walk. The other 5 would have to carry that person through the complex obstacle course, rope climbing wall, scaling, underwater swimming, and precision shooting. The team with the best overall time would receive weekend leave privileges. "Squad assignments are posted on the board," Morrison announced. "Memorize your teammates' names because their lives depend on you and yours depend on them." Elle walked over to check the assignments, her stomach already sinking with premonition. Murphy's Law was alive and well in the military. The universe had a sense of humor, and that sense of humor was usually cruel. Squad 7, her eyes scanned the names: Sloane Ashcroft, Harper Kincaid, Bridget Thorne, Lisa Montgomery, Rachel Dunmore, Eleanor Reynolds, of course. The three women who spent their free time questioning her existence, plus two who had carefully remained neutral in all conflicts. This was going to be a long day. Sloane saw the assignments at the same time. Her reaction was immediate and theatrical. "Great," she said loudly enough for everyone in the vicinity to hear. "Looks like we got stuck with the weak link." Harper nodded, falling into her familiar role as Sloane's chorus. "Don't worry. When she slows us down, we'll just leave her behind. That's what would happen in real combat anyway." Rachel Dunmore, the quiet woman from Colorado, looked uncomfortable with the hostile comments but said nothing. She had kind eyes and a good heart, but self-preservation was a powerful instinct. Lisa Montgomery, meanwhile, seemed more interested in studying the obstacle course layout than engaging in the drama. She was practical that way, one of the few candidates who kept emotions separate from mission requirements. Morrison blew his whistle, and the teams moved to their starting positions. Elle noticed that Squad 7 had drawn the most challenging version of the course. Their route included an additional underwater component and longer carrying distances, either random assignment or Morrison testing something. With Morrison, you never knew. "All right, listen up," Sloane said, automatically assuming leadership of the group. Her voice carried the confidence of someone who had never failed at anything important. "Kincaid, you'll be our injured soldier since you're the lightest. Montgomery and Dunmore, you take the front positions for carrying. Thorne and I will handle the middle supports." She paused, looking at Elle with barely concealed contempt. "Reynolds, you can bring up the rear and try not to get in our way." Elle remained silent. There was no point in arguing about position assignments. She had learned that lesson in her first week of this charade. The less she said, the less ammunition she gave them. Besides, rear position had advantages. You could observe the entire team's performance. You could identify weaknesses. You could prepare for the moment when everything inevitably fell apart. Lisa Montgomery spoke up, her voice practical and direct. "Shouldn't we discuss strategy? This course looks really difficult, and we need everyone working together." Bridget Thorne shook her head dismissively. "The strategy is simple. The five of us do the work. Reynolds tries to keep up. If she can't handle it, she should drop out now and save us all the embarrassment." As they prepared for the exercise, Elle watched the other teams organizing their approaches. She noticed details that her teammates missed: the best handholds on the climbing wall, the optimal angle for rope ascent, the most efficient carrying positions for the underwater section. Years of specialized training had taught her to assess tactical situations quickly and thoroughly. Every environment was a problem to be solved. Every challenge had a solution if you understood the variables. Morrison's whistle pierced the morning air like a knife. Squad 7 began. The first obstacle was simple wooden barriers 3 feet high that they had to carry Harper over without dropping her. Sloane and Bridget took the lead, their athletic builds making the work look easy. Lisa and Rachel provided steady support. Elle brought up the rear, her hands firmly gripping Harper's ankles, taking more weight than anyone realized. They cleared the barriers in good time. Confidence grew. The rope climbing section came next. They had to maintain their grip on Harper while ascending 40 feet of thick nautical rope. This was where upper body strength mattered, where hours in the gym translated into inches of progress. Sloane led the way, her powerful shoulders bunching as she pulled them upward. Bridget matched her pace. Lisa and Rachel struggled slightly, but maintained their holds. Elle climbed with her legs more than her arms, using technique to compensate for size, distributing weight efficiently across muscle groups designed for endurance rather than explosive strength. They reached the top, still together, still functional. Then came the wall, 12 feet of weather-beaten wood, vertical and unforgiving. The challenge was not just climbing it. The challenge was getting Harper to the top while climbing it themselves. This required coordination, trust in someone strong enough to bear the primary lifting load. Sloane had positioned herself as the primary lifter. She crouched at the base of the wall, hands interlocked to create a stirrup. Lisa and Rachel would boost Harper onto Sloane's shoulders. Then Sloane would stand, raising Harper high enough to grab the top of the wall. Meanwhile, Bridget would climb up the side, reaching down to help pull Harper over. The plan was sound. The execution was flawed. Sloane took Harper's weight and began to stand. Her face reddened with effort and embarrassment. The other teams had made this look easy, but Harper was not as light as they had assumed, and Sloane had spent energy on the earlier obstacles. Her grip began to slip. "Come on, Ashcroft," Bridget shouted from her position bracing the wall. "You're supposed to be stronger than this." Sloane's face contorted with exertion and humiliation. "She's heavier than she looks," she grunted, nearly dropping Harper as her grip failed. Without being asked, Elle moved into position and helped stabilize Harper from below. Her placement was perfect, taking just enough weight to allow Sloane to regain her grip and complete the lift. The assistance was invisible to the casual observer, but it made the difference between success and failure. They got Harper over the wall. The team followed. Instead of thanking Elle for the save, Sloane shot her an irritated look as if accepting help from the weak link was somehow insulting. As if needing that help was Elle's fault, rather than her own. They pushed forward. The underwater obstacle waited. The tunnel was legendary among SEAL candidates. 50 feet of submerged darkness, concrete walls close enough to touch on both sides. No light except what filtered through from the exit. No air except what you held in your lungs. And in this exercise, they had to carry Harper through while she played dead weight. The water was cold, 58 degrees maintained at that temperature specifically to add physiological stress. Cold enough to accelerate breathing. Cold enough to trigger panic in those who were not prepared. Sloane led them into the water, her earlier confidence returning now that she was back to playing to her strengths. She was a strong swimmer. This should be easy. The 6 women submerged together, their grip on Harper maintained through practiced holds. Sloane kicked forward with powerful strokes, leading them into the darkness of the tunnel. Light faded behind them, the concrete walls closed in. 15 feet, 20 feet, 25 feet. Sloane's lungs began to burn. The cold water sapped strength faster than she had anticipated. Her kicks became less powerful. Her grip on Harper loosened slightly. 30 feet, 35 feet. Panic touched the edges of Sloane's mind. The tunnel seemed longer than it had looked from the outside. The exit was not where it should be. Her chest burned with the need to breathe. 40 feet. Sloane's grip failed. Harper felt the change immediately, the secure hold giving way to desperate clutching. Water entered Harper's nose and mouth as the coordination of the carry broke down. She began to choke, unable to help herself while playing the role of injured soldier. This was how people drowned in training. This was how exercises became body recovery operations. Elle had been waiting for this moment. She had felt Sloane's rhythm change 30 seconds earlier, had sensed the panic building, had positioned herself to respond. Without hesitation, Elle swam forward and took over Sloane's position. Her grip on Harper was still firm enough to provide security, gentle enough not to cause pain. Her movements underwater were smooth and controlled, unlike the frantic struggling of her panicking teammates. She had done this before in water much darker, much deeper, much more dangerous. 50 feet of concrete tunnel was nothing compared to a nighttime ocean infiltration with 60 pounds of gear. Elle guided the group through the remainder of the tunnel with the precision of someone who had done this particular evolution 1,000 times, which she had just not in this facility and not while pretending to be a struggling trainee. They emerged on the other side, gasping and coughing. Harper rolled onto the concrete deck, choking up water. Sloane bent over, hands on her knees, trying to hide how close she had come to complete failure. Lisa Montgomery's voice cut through the sound of their gasping. Ashcroft was drowning Kincaid. Reynolds saved the exercise. Sloane looked up, her face a mixture of anger and humiliation. "I had it under control." "Your grip was failing," Lisa said bluntly. She was not cruel about it, just factual. "We all felt it. Reynolds took over and got us through." Sloane wanted to argue, but the evidence was lying on the deck, coughing up pool water. Instead, she turned her anger toward a more convenient target. If Reynolds was such a great swimmer, why is she barely past the pool test? It was a good question. It was the right question. It was the kind of question that could unravel everything if someone pursued it far enough. Elle said nothing. She helped Harper to her feet and prepared for the final obstacle. The precision shooting challenge waited at the top of a steep hill. They had to carry Harper up the incline, then each team member had to hit 5 targets at various distances while supporting their injured teammates' weight. This combined endurance, strength, and the fine motor control required for accurate shooting, all while exhausted and oxygen deprived. Sloane went first. She was still rattled from the underwater failure. Her hands shook slightly as she raised the M4 carbine. She fired at the first target 100 meters away. Miss! She adjusted and fired again. Hit. The second target fell, but the third, fourth, and fifth shots all went wide. 2 out of 5. Not failing, but not impressive. Harper managed 3 out of 5. Bridget hit 4, which was respectable. Lisa Montgomery also scored 4 hits, drawing approving nods from Morrison, who was observing from 50 meters away. Rachel Dunmore stepped up and managed 3 hits, which was decent given the difficult conditions and the fact that she was not a particularly strong shooter under the best circumstances. Then it was Elle's turn. She accepted the M4 with the same calm she had shown through every evolution. Her hands were steady despite the exhaustion that should have been making them shake. Her breathing was controlled in through the nose, out through the mouth, the rhythm of someone who had learned breath control in much worse conditions than this. She took her shooting stance. Feet shoulder-width apart, weight slightly forward, grip firm but not tense, cheek weld solid, sight picture clear. The first target was a small circle 100 meters away. Elle aligned her sights, controlled her breathing, and squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out. The target fell. She transitioned to the second target without pause. 125 meters. Slight wind from the east. She compensated automatically. Squeezed, target down. Third target, 150 meters. Smaller circle. More difficult shot after 2 rounds already fired. Elle made it look routine. Target down. By the time she fired her 5th shot, other teams had stopped their own exercises to watch. Perfect scores were rare in training. Perfect scores while exhausted and carrying a teammate were nearly impossible. Elle lowered the weapon and safetied it with practiced efficiency. 5 shots, 5 targets, textbook performance. Morrison approached their team as they completed the final obstacle. His expression was unreadable, which made Elle nervous. Throughout the exercise, she had tried to help her team succeed while avoiding any actions that might seem like showing off. But the shooting was hard to explain away. You either hit the targets or you did not. Interesting performance, Morrison said, looking directly at Elle. His eyes were sharp, evaluating. Someone on this team has clearly had advanced training, professional training. Sloan straightened up, assuming the comment was directed at her, despite her mediocre shooting performance. Thank you, Chief. I've been working really hard to improve my skills. Morrison's eyes never left Elle's face. I wasn't talking to you, Ashcroft. He stepped closer to Elle, studying her with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle. What's your background, Reynolds, before this training program? Elle felt her teammates' eyes boring into her. This was the moment she had been dreading since the operation began. The moment when her carefully maintained cover story might begin to unravel. She had worked so hard to blend in to appear like just another trainee working her way through the program. But performance under pressure revealed truth. The body remembered training even when the mind tried to hide it. Standard military training, Chief, she replied carefully. Nothing special. Morrison nodded slowly, but his expression suggested he did not entirely believe her answer. Standard training doesn't produce shooting like that under pressure. Standard training doesn't teach underwater navigation techniques that advanced. Where did you really learn those skills, Reynolds? The other women on her team exchanged confused glances. They had expected Elle to struggle with the physical challenges, not excel at them. The contradiction between their assumptions and what they had just witnessed was creating uncomfortable questions in minds that preferred simple answers. Morrison watched Elle for another long moment, then turned to address the entire squad. Your team time was competitive. Montgomery, good situational awareness. Dunmore, solid effort. Ashcroft. He paused. You need to work on maintaining performance under stress. When things got difficult, you let your team down. Reynolds had to save your evolution. The words hit Sloan like a physical blow. Her face flushed red. For weeks, she had been at the top of every ranking, the obvious star of their training class. Now Morrison was telling her that the weakest trainee had saved her from failure. Dismissed, Morrison said. Hit the showers. Evening brief is at 1800 hours. As the team dispersed, Elle could feel the weight of their stares. Questions were forming. Suspicions were growing. The perfect score shooting, combined with the underwater rescue, had cracked her cover. Not broken it, but cracked it. And cracks always spread. That evening, as Elle walked to the shower facility, she knew what was waiting for her. The confrontation was inevitable. The questions would come, and she would have to deflect them one more time, buying a few more days for her investigation to reach its conclusion. 91 days of careful acting. 91 days of deliberate mediocrity, punctuated by moments where instinct and training took over, despite her best efforts to hide them. 91 days of being mocked in the showers by women who had no idea who she really was. The water fell cold against her skin. The words fell harsh against her ears. And Lieutenant Commander Eleanor Grace Reynolds, commanding officer of SEAL Team 7, endured both with the same quiet strength that had carried her through much worse than wounded pride. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight brought something she had not anticipated: the arrival of the one man who could see through her disguise. The evening sun painted the Pacific Ocean in shades of amber and blood. Elle stood alone on the beach behind the training facility, her boots sinking slightly into wet sand still warm from the afternoon heat. Salt air filled her lungs with each controlled breath. Waves crashed against the shore in rhythmic percussion, drowning out the distant sounds of candidates running evening drills. She needed this moment, these few minutes of solitude before the weight of her mission crushed down again like water pressure at depth. 91 days of pretending to be weak. 91 days of accepting mockery she could end with 6 words. But the mission was not about her pride. It had never been about her pride. Classified information was bleeding out of this facility like arterial blood. Training protocols that took decades to develop. Operational procedures that kept SEALs alive in hostile territory. Personnel identification methods that protected operators and their families from enemy retaliation. For 14 months, someone had been selling American secrets, and 2 SEAL team operators had already died because of intelligence that should never have reached enemy hands. The trail had led through encrypted channels and dark web dead drops, ultimately terminating in Karachi, Pakistan. Inner Services Intelligence, the ISI. They had been receiving detailed briefings on SEAL training protocols, operational procedures, and deployment schedules. 8 months ago, Chief Petty Officer Michael Torres and Petty Officer First Class David Chen had walked into an ambush in Kandahar because the Taliban knew exactly when and where they would be. The ISI had shared American intelligence with their Taliban proxies. 2 families received folded flags because someone at this facility was selling secrets. Elle's orders were simple: find the leak, stop it, tell no one. So she had become Eleanor Reynolds' struggling trainee. She had failed fitness tests she could pass blindfolded. She had missed shots that should have been automatic. She had endured mockery from women whose combat experience consisted of punching bags and obstacle courses, while her own service record was written in classified blood across 3 theaters of war. But today she had made mistakes. The underwater rescue had been unavoidable. Harper would have drowned without intervention. The shooting, though, that had been her instincts betraying her operational discipline. When a weapon was in her hands, her body remembered 8 years of muscle memory. 5 targets, 5 shots, no misses. Morrison had noticed. Morrison was not stupid. And now the questions would begin. Walk with me, Reynolds. The voice came from behind her, deep and weathered like old leather. Elle turned to find Commander Garrett Blackwell standing 10 feet away. She had not heard him approach. That was impressive for a man his age. That was concerning for her operational security. Blackwell was 68 years old, but moved like a man 20 years younger. Gray hair cut military short, blue eyes that had seen things most people only read about in declassified documents. 45 years of Navy service, most of it in special warfare. He was a contractor, instructor, now officially retired, but still teaching because warriors like him never really stopped fighting. Elle had been briefing on all the facility instructors before she arrived. Blackwell's file was thick with redacted sections. Cold War operations in the late 70s and early 80s. Grenada in 83. Panama in 89, where her father had died. A career spent in shadows, leaving no footprints, but changing the course of conflicts most Americans never knew existed. Sir, Elle acknowledged, her voice carefully neutral. Don't sir me, Reynolds. I'm a contractor. The Navy doesn't pay me enough to stand on ceremony. He gestured toward a path that led away from the facility, away from ears and eyes. Walk with me. That wasn't a request. They walked in silence for 2 minutes. Blackwell set a steady pace along the beach, his boots leaving deep prints in the sand. Elle matched his stride, her mind racing through possible scenarios. If he was the leak, this could be the moment he moved against her. If he was not, this conversation could compromise her entire operation. I've been in the Navy for 45 years, Blackwell finally set, his eyes on the horizon. I know what operator-level training looks like. That shooting today, that underwater work, You're not a trainee, Reynolds. Elle kept her face carefully blank. Just had a good day, sir. Sometimes things come together. Don't insult my intelligence. Blackwell stopped walking and turned to face her directly. I ran a background check on you. Used some old contacts who still owe me favors. You want to know what I found? Elle's heart rate increased, but her breathing stayed controlled. I'm sure my service record is all there, sir. Your service record is 90% redacted. Naval Academy graduate, that part's real. Top of your class in tactical studies, also real. Then there's a gap of 8 years with almost nothing. A few duty station assignments that don't add up. Some medals with no citation details. And a current rank that makes no sense for someone your age unless you've been doing something extraordinary that nobody's allowed to talk about. He pulled out a phone and showed her the screen. It displayed her official personnel file, but someone with high-level access had tagged all the redacted sections in red. There were a lot of red sections. That level of classification isn't standard for regular Navy personnel, Reynolds. That's the kind of file that belongs to someone operating in the black. Someone doing work that Congress doesn't even get briefed on. Elle weighed her options. Denial would be pointless now. Blackwell had access to systems that should have been locked down. That suggested either very high security clearance or very good intelligence contacts. Possibly both. If you're right about me, Elle said carefully, what would you do with that information? Blackwell smiled, a hard expression that never reached his eyes. I did something similar in '79. 8 months undercover at Naval Station Norfolk. There was an intelligence leak during heightened Cold War tensions. Submarine deployment schedules were ending up in Soviet hands. Good men were dying because the Russians knew exactly where our boats would be. He pocketed his phone and looked at her with something that might have been respect. I spent 8 months pretending to be a low-level maintenance worker. Took orders from kids barely out of high school. Ate in the enlisted mess. Kept my mouth shut while people who'd never seen combat told me how the Navy should work. I know this game, Commander. The last word hung between them like a detonated grenade. Commander, her actual rank. Blackwell was not guessing anymore. How long have you known, Elle asked quietly? Since day 3. Watched you deliberately miss shots on the pistol range. You overcorrected by exactly the amount needed to miss the target by 2 inches. That's not poor shooting, that's calculated shooting. That's someone who knows exactly where the bullet will go and chooses to put it off target. Elle closed her eyes briefly. 3 months of careful acting, and she had been burned in 3 days by someone who understood the game better than she did. If you're right about me, Elle said, opening her eyes, then I need your silence. American lives depend on it. You have it, Blackwell said immediately. And if you need backup when this goes sideways, and it will go sideways, you know where to find me. But be careful, Commander. Whoever you're hunting knows facility operations well enough to avoid detection for 14 months. That suggests someone with training and patience. Someone like us. He turned and walked back toward the facility, leaving Elle alone with the setting sun and the weight of exposure. The alarm sounded at 2100 hours. Elle was in the female barracks when the emergency lights began flashing. Red strobes painted the walls in rhythmic urgency. The alarm was not the general quarters signal used for drills. This was the security breach alarm, high-pitched and insistent, designed to cut through sleep and confusion. Women poured out of bunks and into the hallway, some still half-dressed. Elle grabbed her boots and moved with the crowd toward the assembly area. Her mind was already calculating possibilities. Security breaches during her investigation were not coincidental. Someone was moving. The question was, why now? Master Chief Morrison stood in the corridor outside the barracks, his face grim in the emergency lighting. Everyone to the common room. Now this is not a drill. They assembled quickly, 72 women in various states of dress and confusion. Morrison's presence alone was enough to kill the nervous chatter. When a Master Chief looked that serious, smart people shut up and listened. We have a security breach, Morrison announced without preamble. Building C classified materials vault. Someone accessed restricted files without authorization approximately 5 minutes ago. The facility is now in lockdown. Nobody leaves, nobody makes outside calls. Military police are conducting a search. Elle's blood ran cold. Building C housed the most sensitive training documents, detailed operational procedures that could be catastrophic if they reached enemy hands. The timing was too perfect. Her cover had been compromised today with the shooting demonstration. Someone had decided to make a desperate move while they still could. All personnel will remain in common areas under supervision until further notice, Morrison continued. MPs will conduct room-by-room searches. You will cooperate fully. Anyone found with unauthorized materials will face federal charges. Is that understood? A chorus of "Yes, Chief" echoed through the room. Morrison's eyes swept across the assembled women and stopped on Elle. Something flickered in his expression, recognition maybe, or suspicion. Reynolds, Ashcroft, Kincaid, Thorne. My office. Now. The four women followed Morrison through corridors now patrolled by armed military police. The casual atmosphere of a training facility had transformed into something harder, more serious. This was what happened when the games became real. Morrison's office was small and functional. Gray walls covered with operational maps and training schedules. A desk buried under paperwork and coffee cups. And standing beside the desk, Major Robert Williams from the Base Military Police Detachment. Williams was 42, built like someone who still hit the gym every day, with close-cropped dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. He wore the expression of a man who had seen too many investigations that started as accidents and ended as tragedies. Sit, Morrison ordered, gesturing to chairs arranged in front of his desk. They sat. Sloan looked defiant, Harper nervous, Bridget confused. Elle kept her face carefully neutral while her mind raced through operational protocols. If the breach had occurred 5 minutes ago and they had all been in the barracks, they had alibis. But investigations were never that simple. Major Williams needs to ask you some questions, Morrison said. Answer honestly. Williams stepped forward, pulling out a small notebook. I understand there was an incident in the shower facility this evening, a confrontation involving the four of you. Tell me about it. Sloan spoke first, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. We had words with Reynolds. We've questioned whether she belongs in the program. What kind of words? Williams pressed. We suggested she might be more suited to a different role, Sloan said carefully. Administrative work instead of combat operations. You mocked her, Williams said flatly. You questioned her abilities. You told her she didn't belong here. Is that accurate? The three women exchanged glances. Finally, Harper nodded. Yes, sir. We've been hard on her. Williams made notes. How long has this been going on? Since the program started, Bridget admitted quietly. We thought she was lowering standards. And you, Reynolds, Williams turned his attention to Elle. How did you respond to this treatment? Elle kept her voice level. I focused on my training, sir. Words don't matter. Performance matters. Interesting perspective, Williams said, because your performance today was remarkable. Perfect shooting score. Expert underwater navigation. Chief Morrison tells me you showed skills well beyond what a trainee should possess. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sloan, Harper, and Bridget all turned to look at Elle with expressions that mixed confusion and dawning suspicion. I got lucky, sir, Elle said. Lucky. Williams let the word hang. Chief Morrison has been training SEALs for 20 years. He doesn't believe in lucky. Morrison stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Reynolds, I need the truth. Are you really just a trainee struggling through this program? Elle met his eyes and made a decision. The investigation had reached a critical point. The security breach changed everything. She needed authorization, but she also needed to control the narrative before it spun completely out of her grasp. Chief, I need to make a secure phone call. Classification level top secret. Morrison's eyes widened slightly, the only crack in his carefully maintained composure. My office has a scrambled line. You're authorized to use it. Elle picked up the secure phone and dialed a number from memory. The line clicked twice as encryption protocols engaged. A voice answered on the third ring. Authentication, the voice demanded. Osprey 779er. Authentication code Tango Whiskey 34 Charlie. Authenticated. Go ahead, Osprey. Handler cover is compromised by facility security breach. Suspect now aware of investigation and escalating actions. Request authorization for limited operational disclosure to facility security personnel. Over. There was a pause that lasted 5 seconds but felt like 5 hours. Then the voice came back. Authorization granted for limited disclosure. Maintain operational security protocols. Do not reveal specifics of investigation targets. Confirm. Confirmed. Osprey out. Elle hung up the phone and turned to face four people whose entire understanding of reality was about to shift. I am authorized to tell you that I'm not a trainee in the traditional sense. Elle began choosing each word with surgical precision. I'm here on a classified assignment that requires me to maintain a low profile while observing this training program. Sloane's face transformed confusion, giving way to vindication. I knew it. You're a spy. You've been watching us, evaluating us, reporting on our performance. Not exactly, Elle replied. My assignment has nothing to do with evaluating trainee performance. I'm here because intelligence suggests that someone in this program may be compromised by foreign agents. The statement hit the room like a concussion grenade. Williams leaned forward sharply. Morrison's face went from confusion to deadly serious in an instant. The three female trainees looked at each other with growing alarm. Compromised how? Morrison demanded. We have reason to believe that classified information about SEAL training methods, operational procedures, and personnel identities has been leaked to hostile organizations. Elle explained. The leak appears to be coming from within this training facility. For 14 months, someone with access has been systematically providing intelligence to foreign contacts. Harper's face had gone pale. You think one of us is a traitor? I think someone with access to this facility has been providing information to people who shouldn't have it, Elle clarified. That could be a trainee, an instructor, support staff contractors, or anyone else with regular access to sensitive materials. Bridget shook her head in disbelief. This is important. We're all loyal Americans. We're training to serve our country, not betray it. I'm sure that's true for most people here, Elle said, but my job is to identify the exception. Morrison stood up from his desk, his expression shifting from confusion to anger. How long have you been investigating this? 13 weeks, since before this training cycle began. 13 weeks of lies. Sloane said, her voice shaking with emotion. 13 weeks of pretending to be our teammate while you were really investigating us as potential traitors. 13 weeks of doing my job, Elle corrected. The same job that protects the lives of every SEAL who goes into combat with confidence that their methods and identities haven't been compromised. The same job that might have saved 2 operators who died 8 months ago when their mission was compromised by leaked intelligence. The room fell silent. Even Sloane could not find a response to that. Williams broke the quiet. Reynolds, if that's even your real name, what's your actual rank, your real background? Elle stood, her posture shifting subtly. The careful slouch of someone trying to look smaller vanished. Her shoulders went back. Her spine straightened. The transformation was not dramatic, but it was complete. The struggling trainee disappeared. The woman who replaced her radiated command presence like heat from burning metal. Lieutenant Commander Eleanor Grace Reynolds, Commanding Officer SEAL Team 7, 8 years active service. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The words hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot, impossible to take back, impossible to ignore. Then Sloane's mouth fell open. You're a SEAL Team Commander. Daughter of Army Ranger Colonel William Reynolds, killed in action, Panama, December 1989. Elle's voice was steady, professional, reciting facts without emotion. Naval Academy, top of class tactical studies. First female in my SEAL qualification class to complete the program. 8 years active duty. 3 combat deployments to Afghanistan, 2 to Iraq, 1 to Syria. 47 successful combat missions. 2 Bronze Stars with Valor Device. Silver Star. Purple Heart from Fallujah. Harper's voice came out as barely a whisper. The woman we've been mocking, in the showers, for 13 weeks, is our superior officer. Was, Elle corrected. For the purposes of this investigation, I held no rank. I was nobody. That was necessary for operational security. Morrison sank back into his chair, his face showing a mixture of awe and something that might have been anger at being deceived. Christ, they sent a SEAL team commander undercover as a trainee. That's how serious this is. 2 operators are dead, Elle said flatly. That's how serious this is. Sloane stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. She took 2 steps toward Elle and then stopped, her face cycling through emotions too quickly to track. Finally, she dropped to parade rest, the instinctive reaction of someone confronted by a superior officer. "Commander, we owe you," Sloane's voice broke. "Oh God, what have we done? What have we been saying to you?" Harper started crying, actual tears running down her face. "You saved my life today. In the underwater tunnel. When Ashcroft's grip failed, you were there. And I've been treating you like you were worthless." Bridget stood frozen, her face white. She had spent 13 weeks telling Elle that women didn't belong in combat roles. And Elle was one of the most decorated female combat veterans in the United States military. "Stop," Elle said quietly. "I don't need your apologies. I need your silence and your cooperation. This investigation is ongoing. Whoever is leaking information knows that something is wrong now. The security breach tonight proves they're escalating. That makes them desperate. Desperate people make mistakes." Williams pulled out his phone and began typing rapidly. "I'm coordinating with base security. We need to review all access logs, security footage, personnel movements." Morrison nodded. "What do you need from us, Commander?" Before Elle could answer, Williams's radio crackled to life. "Major, this is Lieutenant Garcia at the Communications Center. We've intercepted a transmission from the base. Appears to contain coded information. Short burst encrypted frequency." Williams grabbed his radio. "When did this transmission occur?" "Approximately 3 minutes ago, sir. We're working to decode the message now." Elle felt ice run down her spine. "Can you triangulate the source?" "Working on it, sir. Signal was very brief, but we think it originated somewhere in the main training complex." Morrison stood. "That's this building." The leak was not just active, they were transmitting right now in real time while the facility was supposedly locked down. Someone with that level of confidence and access was not a low-level operator. This was someone with training, resources, and nerves of steel. "Garcia, priority 1, get me that transmission source," Williams barked into his radio. "Lock down all exits from the training complex. Nobody in or out." Elle was already moving toward the door. "Chief, I need a sidearm and access to tactical gear." "You're not authorized for direct action on base," Morrison started. Elle turned on him, and for the first time since this conversation began, she let command authority enter her voice. "Chief, I'm not requesting permission. I'm informing you that I'm taking tactical command of this situation. I'm the ranking special operations officer present, and this is now a federal investigation involving national security. Do you understand?" Morrison held her stare for 2 seconds, then nodded sharply. "Armory is 3 doors down. Authorization code is 4739. Commander, let us help." Sloane stepped forward, her earlier hostility replaced by desperate need to prove herself. "We can assist. You're not trained for tactical operations," Elle said, already moving toward the door. "Then train us," Sloane insisted. "Right now, in the field. This is why we're here, isn't it? To learn." Elle stopped and looked at the 3 women who had spent months questioning whether she belonged in their world. They had no idea what they were asking for. Real operations were not obstacle courses or shooting ranges. Real operations meant split-second decisions with lives hanging in the balance. Real operations meant living with the consequences when those decisions went wrong. But they were right about one thing. This was why they were here, to become operators. And operators learned by doing. "Fine," Elle said. "Ashcroft, Kincaid, Thorne, you provide backup only. You stay 50 meters back. You provide radio relay and overwatch. You do not engage the suspect under any circumstances. If I tell you to hold position, you hold. If I tell you to retreat, you retreat. If I tell you to jump off a cliff, you ask how far down. That understood?" All 3 snapped to attention. "Yes, Commander." "Morrison, Williams, coordinate with base security. I want all exits covered and all personnel locations accounted for," Elle ordered. "Whoever is transmitting is still in this building. We have maybe 5 minutes before they realize the transmission was intercepted." She moved toward the armory, with purpose, the 3 female trainees following in her wake like ducklings following their mother. Except their mother was a SEAL team commander with 8 years of combat experience, and they were about to get their first real lesson in what that actually meant. The armory door opened with Morrison's code. Elle moved through the space with the efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times. Sig Sauer P226, her preferred sidearm. Tactical vest load-bearing level 3 armor. Radio with encrypted frequency. Night vision goggles. 2 extra magazines. She geared up in 90 seconds flat. When she turned around, the Sloane Harper and Bridget were watching with expressions that mixed awe and fear. "You three get vests and radios. Nothing else," Elle ordered. "Your communications relay, not shooters. Your job is to keep me informed and call for backup if this goes sideways. Questions?" "No, Commander," they said in unison. Elle's radio crackled. Williams's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Reynolds, we've got a location on that transmission. Building C sublevel maintenance area. Security cameras show one person moving through the service quarters. Can't get facial identification. They're avoiding camera angles." "On my way," Elle replied. She looked at her 3-person backup team. "Stay on my 6, 50 meters. Radio silence unless I ask for information or you see something critical. Move." They moved through the quarters of the training complex like a small tactical unit. Elle took point, her movements economical and professional. The 3 trainees followed, trying to mirror her stance, her pace, her tactical awareness. They were not very good at it yet, but they were learning. Building C was connected to the main training complex through an underground tunnel. Elle approached the entrance with weapon drawn, scanning corners and checking sightlines. Behind her 50 meters back, as ordered, Sloane Harper and Bridget watched through the darkness. "Commander, this is Ashcroft." Sloane's voice came over the radio, quiet and controlled. "I have visual on your position. Your 6 is clear." Good. She was learning radio discipline. Elle moved into the tunnel. Emergency lights cast everything in red shadow. The air smelled like concrete and old water. Her boots made no sound on the floor. 8 years of training had taught her how to move through hostile environments without betraying her presence. The sublevel maintenance area was a maze of pipes, electrical conduits, and storage rooms. Perfect place for a clandestine transmission. Minimal foot traffic, multiple exit routes. Easy to explain your presence, if caught just checking on mechanical systems. Elle's radio crackled again. This time it was Williams. "Reynolds Building Security has someone in custody from the sublevel. Female 30s wearing maintenance coveralls. She's asking for a lawyer." Elle froze. "Identity." She's not talking. But she matches the description of someone who shouldn't be in that area at this time of night. Something was wrong. The pieces did not fit. Elle had been tracking this leak for 13 weeks. She had narrowed her suspect pool to 6 people with the necessary access and opportunity. None of them were female maintenance workers in their 30s. "Williams, do not move the suspect until I get there," Elle ordered, "and check facility access logs for the last hour. I want to know everyone who entered or exited this building." "Copy that." Elle reversed course, moving back through the tunnel with the same tactical precision. When she emerged, Sloane and her team were waiting. "Change of plans," Elle said. "Someone's in custody, but something doesn't add up. Follow me. Stay alert." They moved as a unit toward the security office where Williams was holding the suspect. The building's main corridor was empty. Everyone had been ordered to remain in their assigned areas during lockdown. The security office was small and cramped. Williams stood beside a woman in blue maintenance coveralls. She was young, maybe 35, with short brown hair and eyes that showed more fear than guilt. Elle studied her for 5 seconds and knew with certainty this woman was not the leak. The body language was all wrong. The fear was real, not performed. This was someone caught in a bad situation, not someone who had been running a sophisticated intelligence operation for 14 months. "What's your name?" Elle asked. The woman looked at her, then at Williams, then back at Elle. "I want a lawyer." "You'll get one," Elle said, "but first tell me what you were doing in the sublevel maintenance area." "I'm not saying anything without a lawyer." Elle changed tactics. "Who told you to go down there?" The woman's eyes flickered, just a split second of reaction. But it was enough. "Someone gave you orders," Elle pressed. "Someone told you to deliver something or retrieve something." "Who was it?" The woman's face crumpled. "I didn't know it was wrong. He said it was routine equipment maintenance. He said I was helping with an authorized logistics transfer." "Who?" Elle demanded. "Who gave you the orders?" "Instructor Dalton. He said he told me it was official. I was just following orders." Elle's blood turned to ice water in her veins. Instructor Marcus Dalton, former Army Delta Force, contractor, instructor for 18 months, one of the 6 people on her final suspect list. "Where is Dalton now?" Elle asked, her voice deadly calm. The woman shook her head, tears starting to flow. I don't know. He gave me the package, told me to take it to the sub-level communications relay, then leave through the east exit. That's all I know. I swear that's all I know. Williams was already on his radio. All units locate instructor Marcus Dalton immediately. Consider him a person of interest. Do not approach without backup. The radio crackled with responses. Different units reporting different areas clear. Then finally, this is Gate 3. Instructor Dalton signed out 22 minutes ago, 17 minutes before the security alarm. Said he was going off base for personal reasons. Gate log shows he'd been monitoring base radio frequencies, probably heard Commander Reynolds' authorization call, and realized the investigation was closing in. 22 minutes. The security breach had been 5 minutes ago, which meant Dalton had left 17 minutes before the alarm sounded. He had set up this woman as a patsy, used her to make the transmission while he slipped away clean. Williams, what vehicle did he sign out in? L demanded. Williams checked his computer. Black Ford F-150 license plate 7 Victor Charles 4172. Heading was listed as north on Highway 78. Morrison had joined them now, his face grim. Highway 78 runs to the Mexican border. If he reaches the crossing, he's gone, L finished. How long to the nearest checkpoint? 38 minutes at legal speed. Maybe 25 if he's pushing it. L looked at her watch. 22 minutes head start. 25 minutes to the border. They had maybe 3 minutes to intercept before Dalton crossed into Mexico and disappeared into a country with no extradition treaty. I need a tactical vehicle, and I need it now, L said. Morrison was already moving. Motor pool, follow me. L turned to Sloan, Harper, and Bridget. You three are going back to the barracks. Commander, we can help, Sloan protested. This is a real-world pursuit of an armed suspect. L said, you're not ready. You just told us that operators learn by doing, Sloan shot back. Let us learn. L looked at the 3 women who had spent months questioning whether she belonged in their world. They had no idea what they were asking for. A high-speed pursuit across desert terrain. Possible armed confrontation with a trained Delta operator. The kind of situation where split-second decisions determined who went home and who went home in a box. But she had been their age once, had begged for her first real mission, had needed someone to take a chance on her. Get in the vehicle, Elle said. Touch nothing, do exactly what I say without question. If I tell you to stay in the truck during a firefight, you stay. Understood. Yes, Commander. They piled into a tactical vehicle from the motor pool. Elle took the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, a powerful V8 built for pursuit and rough terrain. Sloan rode shotgun. Harper and Bridget were in back. Elle put the vehicle in gear and accelerated hard. The speedometer climbed. 60, 70, 85. The desert highway stretched ahead of them into darkness, and somewhere in that darkness was a man who had betrayed everything they all stood for. The hunt was on. The desert flew past in shades of gray and black, illuminated only by the tactical vehicle's headlights cutting through the night. Elle kept her foot pressed hard on the accelerator, the speedometer needle hovering near 95 miles per hour. The engine roared with mechanical fury, drowning out the sound of wind rushing past the windows. Highway 78 stretched ahead like a ribbon of asphalt through endless nothing. On either side, scrub brush and rock formations disappeared into darkness. This was the kind of terrain that swallowed people whole, where mistakes meant death from exposure or dehydration, long before rescue arrived. Sloan gripped the handle above her door, her knuckles white in the dim glow from the dashboard. She kept her eyes forward, watching the road like she could will their target vehicle to appear. Harper and Bridget sat in the back seat, silent and tense, probably questioning every decision that had led them to this moment. Elle's hands were steady on the wheel. This was not her first high-speed pursuit, not even her 10th. She had chased targets through the mountains of Afghanistan, through the urban chaos of Baghdad, through terrain that made this desert highway look like a Sunday drive. But those pursuits had been with her team operators she had trained with for years, people who knew her signals and anticipated her movements. Tonight, she had 3 trainees who had spent the last 13 weeks mocking her in the showers. The radio crackled. Commander Reynolds, this is Overwatch 1-7. The voice belonged to the naval helicopter pilot tracking Dalton from above. Target vehicle confirmed. Black Ford F-150 southbound highway 7-8 mile marker 147. Speed approximately 88 miles per hour. Distance to border checkpoint is 23.6 miles. L did the math instantly. At their current speeds, they would reach the checkpoint in roughly 16 minutes. Dalton would get there first, but not by much. If Border Patrol could lock down the crossing in time, they had him trapped. Overwatch, this is Reynolds. Has Border Patrol been notified? Affirmative, Commander. They're implementing lockdown protocols now. All southbound traffic being diverted. They'll have the checkpoint sealed in 12 minutes. 12 minutes. They needed to close the gap before Dalton realized his escape route was blocked. A desperate man with Delta Force training and nothing to lose was the most dangerous kind of target. Sloan, Elle said, her voice calm despite the speed and stakes. Radio controls are on your right. Switch to Channel 7 and coordinate with Border Patrol. I need continuous updates on checkpoint status. Sloan's hands fumbled with the radio for a moment before finding the right frequency. Border Patrol, this is Tactical 1 pursuing federal fugitive. Request status update on checkpoint lockdown. Tactical 1, this is Border Station Alpha. Checkpoint lockdown in progress. Estimate 10 minutes to full implementation. Be advised we have multiple civilian vehicles in the area. Recommend extreme caution on approach. Acknowledged, Sloan replied, her voice steadier now. She was learning. Under pressure in real time with actual consequences, riding on every word. Elle's mind was already running through tactical scenarios. Dalton was former Delta. He would have contingency plans. Men like him always did. If the border crossing was blocked, he would look for alternative side roads, smuggler routes, places where the fence was vulnerable. Or he might decide to make a stand, trading his freedom for the chance to take down pursuing officers. Commander Harper's voice came from the back seat. What if he's armed? Assume he is, Elle replied, without taking her eyes off the road. Assume he's carrying at least a sidearm, possibly a rifle. Assume he's willing to use them. What do we do if he starts shooting? You stay in the vehicle like I told you. You get your heads down. You let me handle it. The helicopter's voice came over the radio again. Commander, target vehicle is reducing speed, now approximately 70 miles per hour. He may be aware of aerial surveillance. Elle eased off the accelerator slightly. If Dalton knew he was being tracked from the air, he might also realize ground units were pursuing. She needed to close the distance without spooking him into doing something desperate. Distance to target, Elle asked. Approximately 4.2 miles in closing. 4 miles at their current speeds, they would have visual contact in less than 4 minutes. Elle's hands tightened on the wheel. This was the moment that separated training from reality. Everything up to now had been preparation. What came next would test whether these 3 women sitting with her had what it took to become operators. The radio crackled again, but this time it was a different voice. Commander Garrett Blackwell. Commander Reynolds, this is Blackwell monitoring from base. I'm 15 minutes out with quick reaction force. Hold position until backup arrives. Negative, Elle replied immediately. Target will reach the border before you arrive. We're out of time. Commander, you're pursuing a trained Delta operator with 3 untested trainees as backup. Those are unacceptable odds. Noted, but he's not getting away. Not after what he's done. Reynolds out. She switched off that channel before Blackwell could argue further. He was right about the odds. He was right about the risk. But he was wrong about letting Dalton escape. 2 operators were already dead because of the intelligence this man had leaked. The body count stopped tonight. Commander, I have visual. Sloan pointed through the windshield where taillights had appeared in the distance. Red dots in the darkness moving fast, but not fast enough. Overwatch confirmed visual on target vehicle. Elle said into the radio. Confirmed, Commander. Target vehicle is the black F-150 mile marker 152. You're now 3.7 miles behind in closing. Elle pressed the accelerator harder. The gap narrowed. 3 miles, 2.5, 2 miles, then everything changed. Commander, second vehicle approaching from side road. The helicopter pilot's voice carried new urgency. Black Mercedes SUV military-style movements intercepting target vehicle. Elle's stomach dropped. Say again, Overwatch. Second vehicle. Confirmed. Mercedes SUV just merged onto Highway 78 from Eastern Access Road, now running parallel to target vehicle. Appears to be coordinated movement. Sloan turned to Elle, her face pale in the dashboard light. He has backup. ISI, Elle said grimly. Pakistani Inter-Services Intelligence. The foreign contact that had been receiving Dalton's leaked information. They had sent an extraction team. This was not just a fugitive fleeing, this was an organized intelligence operation pulling out a compromised asset. The radio crackled with Williams's voice from base. Reynolds, that changes the tactical picture significantly. You're now facing multiple armed hostiles with professional training. Understood, Elle replied. Her mind was already adjusting the tactical assessment. 2 vehicles, probably 3 to 4 operatives in the Mercedes. Combined with Dalton, she was looking at 4 to 5 trained combatants. Against her and 3 women who had never fired a shot in anger. Commander, what's our move? Sloan asked. The fear in her voice was honest. That was good. Fear meant she understood the stakes. We finish what we started, Elle said, but the rules just changed. When we stop you 3, they stay in this vehicle no matter what happens. You get on the radio and you call for every available backup unit. You do not exit this vehicle. You do not engage. Are we clear? Crystal clear, Commander, all 3 women said together. The gap continued to close. 1 mile, half a mile. Elle could now see both vehicles clearly, Dalton's Ford F-150 and the Mercedes SUV running in formation. They were approaching an abandoned gas station, one of those forgotten outposts that dot desert highways, like grave markers for failed dreams. The 2 vehicles suddenly decelerated and pulled off the highway into the gas station parking lot. They're stopping, Harper said. Why are they stopping? Elle knew why. They had realized the border checkpoint was locked down. They had seen the helicopter tracking them. They knew ground pursuit was close. So they were choosing their battleground, taking a defensive position rather than being caught in the open or trapped at a checkpoint. Overwatch target vehicles have stopped at abandoned gas station mile marker 154, Elle reported. Request confirmation on checkpoint status. Checkpoint is now fully locked down, Commander. Border Patrol has established perimeter. But you've got approximately 8 minutes before they can redeploy units to your location. 8 minutes. A lifetime in tactical operations. Enough time for trained operatives to dig in established fields of fire-prepare ambush positions. Enough time to destroy evidence or escape into the desert on foot. Elle brought the tactical vehicle to a stop 200 meters from the gas station. Far enough to be outside effective pistol range. Close enough to maintain visual contact. She killed the headlights and the engine, plunging them into darkness, broken only by starlight in the distant glow from the gas station's emergency lighting. Sloan, get on the radio to Border Patrol and base. Tell them we have multiple armed suspects barricaded at this location. Harper, Bridget, use the binoculars in the back. Count how many people you see moving. Look for weapons. The 3 women moved with surprising efficiency. Sloan was already on the radio, her voice steady as she relayed their position. Harper had found the binoculars and was scanning the gas station. Bridget was checking the vehicle's emergency kit, pulling out items that might be useful: flares, first aid supplies, extra radio batteries. Elle studied the tactical situation with the practiced eye of someone who had done this too many times to count. The gas station was a single-story structure, office, restrooms, small convenience store, all abandoned for years. Concrete walls that would stop most rifle rounds. Multiple windows offering sight lines in all directions. Behind it, rocky terrain leading into open desert. I count 4 people, Harper reported. 3 men moving around the Mercedes. 1 person looks like Dalton staying close to the Ford. 4 hostiles, Dalton plus 3 ISI contractors. Not good odds, but not impossible either. Elle's radio crackled. Commander, this is Blackwell. I'm 12 minutes out. Do not engage until we arrive. Copy, Elle said, but she was not making promises she might not keep. She watched the gas station for another 30 seconds. The contractors were taking defensive positions, setting up for a siege. They probably figured they could hold out until darkness gave them a chance to escape on foot. They did not know that Border Patrol was redeploying. They did not know that a quick reaction force was inbound. They did not know that the woman watching them had led 47 combat missions and had no intention of letting them slip away. Elle made her decision. I'm going in, she said quietly. What? Sloan turned sharply. Commander, you said we'd wait for backup. I said you'd wait for backup. I'm going to end this before they have time to destroy evidence or harm hostages. Hostages. Bridget's voice climbed an octave. What hostages? The woman they use as a courier. We left her in custody at base, but these people might have contingencies we don't know about. Every minute we wait is a minute that they use to fortify their position. Elle began checking her equipment, weapon-loaded spare magazines, secured radio functioning. Your job is to stay in this vehicle and coordinate with the incoming units. If shooting starts, you get your heads down. Understood? Commander, you can't take 4 armed men alone, Harper protested. Watch me. Elle exited the vehicle before they could argue further. The desert night was cool, temperature dropping fast now that the sun had been down for hours. She moved low and fast, using the natural terrain for concealment. Rocks and scrub brush that looked like nothing in daylight became cover in darkness. Her radio earpiece crackled with Sloane's voice. Commander, you're insane. This is insane. Stay off the radio unless you have critical information, Elle replied. And watch, you might learn something. She approached the gas station from the west, using the building itself to block sightlines from the Mercedes. The contractors would be watching the highway approach the obvious avenue of attack. They would not expect someone to flank through open desert. Elle covered the distance in 3 minutes, moving in short bursts between positions, always maintaining some form of cover or concealment. When she was 30 meters from the building, she paused behind a large boulder and assessed the situation with fresh eyes. One contractor was visible near the Mercedes, rifle in hand, scanning the highway. Another was on the roof of the gas station, good tactical positioning, giving him overwatch on approaches. The third was somewhere inside the building with Dalton. Standard defensive setup, competent but not exceptional. These were hired contractors, not special forces operators. They followed procedures. That made them predictable. Elle keyed her radio. Sloane, where's the helicopter? Overwatch is maintaining position at 2,000 feet. They have thermal imaging on the building, showing 4 heat signatures, 1 on the roof, 1 outside northeast corner, 2 inside the structure. Perfect. Elle now knew exactly where everyone was. She moved closer, circling to the north side of the building. The contractor on the roof was facing south toward the highway. His attention was fixed on the tactical vehicle parked in the distance. He never looked behind him. Elle reached the base of the building directly below the roof position. The exterior wall was concrete block, rough and weathered. Easy enough to climb if you knew how. And Elle had scaled buildings under fire in 3 different countries. She holstered her weapon and began climbing, fingers finding holes in the crumbling mortar, feet braced against imperfections in the concrete, moving slowly, silently like a shadow climbing toward a man who would never know she was there until it was too late. She reached the roof edge. The contractor was 10 feet away, prone position behind a low parapet wall, rifle pointed toward the highway. Professional setup. Wrong target priority. Elle pulled herself onto the roof in one smooth motion. 3 steps fast and silent. The contractor heard her at the last second, turned his head, eyes widening in shock at seeing a woman materializing from the darkness. He tried to bring his rifle around. Too slow. Elle was already inside his reach, her hand deflecting the weapon as she drove her knee into his solar plexus. Air exploded from his lungs. She followed with an elbow strike to the temple, controlled force enough to render unconscious without killing. The contractor dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Elle zip-tied his wrists and ankles, removed his weapons and radio, and dragged him to the far corner of the roof where he would not be immediately visible. 1 down, 3 to go. Elle keyed her radio. Sloane, tell Overwatch that the roof position is neutralized. Still showing 2 inside and 1 outside. Confirmed, Commander. Sloane's voice carried a mixture of awe and disbelief. You took him down without firing a shot. Violence is loud. Loud attracts attention. Now stay off the radio. Elle moved to the access hatch leading into the building's interior. The metal door was unlocked, contractors expecting to use it for quick exit if needed. She opened it slowly, the hinges creaking softly. Darkness below. Emergency lighting casting everything in green shadow. Elle descended the ladder into what had once been a storage room, now empty, except for debris and broken shelving. Voices came from the main room, 2 men speaking in Urdu. Elle understood enough of the language to follow the conversation. They were arguing about whether to destroy the evidence and run or hold position and hope their diplomatic connections could extract them before American law enforcement arrived. The delusion would have been funny if the situation were not so deadly serious. Elle moved through the storage room toward the main space. Every step was calculated, every breath controlled. This was what 8 years of training had prepared her for moving through hostile environments, neutralizing threats, completing the mission. She reached the doorway and paused to assess. Two men visible, both Pakistani nationals based on appearance and language, both armed with pistols, neither showing military discipline. One stood near the front windows watching the highway. The other was closer to Dalton, who sat at what had once been the cashier's counter, working on a laptop, destroying evidence. Probably wiping files or sending a final transmission. Elle needed to stop that before the intelligence was lost forever. She pulled a flashbang grenade from her vest, non-lethal but extremely effective in enclosed spaces. Pulled the pin, released the spoon, tossed it into the center of the room, and closed her eyes. The explosion was deafening. Blinding white light filled the space, even through Elle's closed eyelids. The two contractors screamed, dropping their weapons to claw at their eyes and ears. Elle moved into the room with her weapon raised, her vision already adjusted because she had not looked at the flash. Down on the ground, hands behind your heads. The contractors could not hear her. Their ears were ringing from the concussion. But they could see the weapon pointed at them and understood the universal language of violence. They dropped to their knees, hands raised in surrender. Dalton was faster. He had been partially shielded by the counter and recovered more quickly. His hand moved toward a pistol on the desk. "Don't," Elle said quietly, her weapon now trained on his center mass. "I'm faster than you, Marcus, and you know it." Dalton's hand froze. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. His face cycled through confusion, recognition, and finally resignation. "Commander Reynolds, they sent you to hunt me. That's almost flattering." Hands on the desk where I can see them. Dalton complied slowly. "You know why I did this, right? You have to understand. I understand you betrayed your country and got American operators killed. That's all I need to understand." "Your father would understand," Dalton said quietly. "Colonel William Reynolds, Panama, December 20th, 1989. I was there. I held him while he died from wounds that never should have happened." Elle's finger tightened on the trigger, but her voice stayed level. "You don't get to talk about my father. He died because of incompetent orders." Dalton's voice rose with genuine anguish. "Political decisions overriding tactical reality. They sent us into that compound without proper intelligence, without adequate support, because some politician wanted a quick win for the evening news. Your father died for a photo opportunity." The words hit Elle like physical blows. She had read the after-action reports, had studied what little had been declassified about the operation, had always suspected that the official narrative did not tell the complete truth. "So you decided to honor his memory by leaking classified information?" Elle's voice was cold. "By compromising operations and getting more operators killed. That's your idea of justice." "I'm not selling to enemies," Dalton insisted. "I've been feeding information to investigative journalists, people who can expose the truth about how broken the system is, how we send warriors to die for political games. And those journalists' secure channels were compromised by ISI intelligence," Elle said flatly. "Every piece of information you thought was going to expose corruption was actually going to Pakistan. You've been an unwitting asset for foreign intelligence. Congratulations, Marcus. You're not a whistleblower. You're a traitor who was too stupid to know he was being used." The color drained from Dalton's face. No, my encryption was compromised from day one. We've been tracking the entire network. You thought you were exposing truth. You were actually feeding operational intelligence to people who want American soldiers dead." Dalton's hands began to shake. I was trying to prevent more deaths like your father's. You caused them instead." Elle moved closer, weapon still trained. "Two SEAL operators died 8 months ago because of intelligence you leaked. Their names were Chief Petty Officer Michael Torres and Petty Officer First Class David Chen. Both had families. Both had children. Both died because you decided your guilt over my father's death mattered more than operational security." The door burst open behind Elle. The third contractor, the one who had been watching the Mercedes, came through with his weapon raised. But Elle had been tracking his position via radio updates from the helicopter. She pivoted smoothly and put 2 rounds center mass before he could acquire a target. The contractor went down. Not dead, Elle's weapon was loaded with controlled penetration rounds designed for close quarters. Effective, but less likely to kill. The man would survive to face trial, which was more mercy than he deserved. Dalton used the distraction to grab for his pistol. Another mistake. Elle's weapon was already swinging back toward him. Try it. Please try it. Give me a reason. He froze hand inches from the weapon. You're under arrest for espionage, unauthorized disclosure of classified information, and conspiracy to provide material support to foreign intelligence services, Elle said formally. You have the right to remain silent. She continued through the Miranda warning while zip-tying Dalton and the two contractors who had surrendered. By the time she finished, the sound of helicopter rotors was growing louder outside. Backup was arriving, Elle keyed her radio. Sloan, 3 subjects in custody, 1 wounded contractor secured. Send in Border Patrol and medical. Copy that, Commander. Sloan's voice carried something that might have been pride. That was incredible. That was Tuesday, Elle replied. Now get on the radio and coordinate the response. You're not done learning yet. Within minutes, the abandoned gas station was swarming with Border Patrol agents, military police, and finally Commander Blackwell with his quick reaction force. Blackwell found Elle securing the laptop Dalton had been using, evidence that would help dismantle the entire ISI network. You couldn't wait 12 minutes, Blackwell said, with something that might have been amusement. 12 minutes was too long, Elle replied. He was destroying evidence. And you took down 4 trained operatives by yourself. 3, the 4th one shot himself, metaphorically speaking. Bad tactics, Blackwell shook his head. I trained operators for 40 years. Never seen anyone quite like you, Commander. My father taught me well, before Dalton got him killed. The words hung between them. Blackwell nodded slowly, understanding that this operation had been about more than just stopping a leak. It had been personal in ways that most missions never were. Dalton was being loaded into a Border Patrol vehicle, hands cuffed, face empty of everything except regret. He looked at Elle one last time as the door closed. She met his gaze without expression. Justice had been served. 2 operators could rest easier now. The drive back to base was quiet. Elle sat in the tactical vehicle with Sloan Harper and Bridget. None of them spoke for the first 20 minutes. Finally, Harper broke the silence. Commander, can I ask you something? Go ahead. How many times have you done that operations like tonight? Elle thought about the question. Thought about villages in Afghanistan where she had hunted high-value targets. Compounds in Iraq where she had led rescue operations. The night in Syria when her team had prevented a chemical weapons transfer and earned her a Silver Star that would never have an official citation. 47 combat missions. Probably 200 tactical operations if you counted all the smaller actions that never made it into official records. Enough times that I stopped counting, Elle said quietly. But it never gets easier. And if it ever does, that's when you need to stop. They drove through the night in silence after that. Back to the base where this had all begun. Back to a world that would never quite be the same for any of them. The next morning brought official ceremonies and uncomfortable conversations. Master Chief Morrison assembled the entire training class on the parade ground at 0900 hours. 72 women in dress uniforms standing at attention under a sky that promised heat by afternoon. Morrison's voice carried across the formation with the authority of 30 years' service. Class, you have been training alongside someone extraordinary for 13 weeks. Someone who endured your doubt, your mockery, your questions about whether she belonged. Time to meet the real Lieutenant Reynolds. Elle stepped forward from where she had been standing at the back of the formation. But this time she wore her actual uniform, the dress blues with Lieutenant Commander rank insignia gleaming on the shoulders. The ribbons on her chest told a story that most of them could not read, but all of them understood meant sacrifice and blood and competence, proven under fire. Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor Device. Purple Heart, Navy Marine Corps Commendation Medal with Valor. Combat Action Ribbon. The awards covered 3 rows each one, representing a moment when she had been tested and found sufficient. At her collar, the seal trident gleamed in the morning sun, the symbol she had earned through pain and persistence, the symbol that 3 women in this formation had told her she did not deserve. Morrison read from an official commendation for exceptional performance in classified counterintelligence operation resulting in neutralization of significant security threat to naval special warfare operations, demonstrating extraordinary tactical acumen, operational discipline, and commitment to duty under extreme personal duress. Commander Eleanor Grace Reynolds is hereby recognized for service above and beyond. The words echoed across the parade ground and meant nothing compared to what came next. Commander Blackwell stepped forward. He moved with the careful dignity of a man whose body had given everything to his country and now demanded payment in aches and old wounds. In his hand, he carried a small black case. Commander Reynolds, Blackwell said formally, 45 years I've served in naval special warfare, seen thousands of operators come and go, some good, some great, a very few exceptional. He opened the case to reveal a challenge coin, worn brass, engraved with an eagle and trident and the date 1982. This coin is from Operation Urgent Fury, Grenada, my first real combat operation. I've carried it for 42 years. Today I'm passing it to you because you've earned a place among the finest warriors I've served beside. He handed Elle the coin and rendered a salute that spoke of respect earned and given freely. Elle returned the salute with the precision of someone who understood that ceremonies mattered because they acknowledged sacrifice that could never be fully repaid. Learn this lesson. Blackwell addressed the formation. Never judge a warrior by appearance. Never assume size determines capability. Never mistake quiet strength for weakness. Commander Reynolds endured 13 weeks of mockery because her mission required it. Because protecting American operators mattered more than her pride. That's what service looks like. Remember it. The formation remained silent as Blackwell stepped back. Then Morrison dismissed them, and 72 women dispersed to morning training, each carrying new understanding of what it meant to earn the title warrior. Elle was packing her gear in Morrison's office when Sloane Harper and Bridget appeared in the doorway. They stood uncertain, three women who had spent months being cruel to someone they had fundamentally misunderstood. Sloane spoke first, her voice breaking. Commander, for 13 weeks, we mocked you in the showers. Every single day. We questioned whether you belonged here. We treated you like you were worthless. And the entire time you were... She could not finish. Harper's face was wet with tears she was not bothering to hide. You saved my life yesterday. In the tunnel when Ashcroft's grip failed. You were there, and before that, in the training evolution. And we repaid you with cruelty. Bridget, who had spent weeks arguing that women did not belong in combat roles, could barely meet Elle's eyes. I told you that you were lowering standards, that political correctness was getting people killed, and you're one of the most decorated combat veterans in the entire military. Elle set down the gear bag she had been packing and looked at the three women who stood before her. They were young, they were learning, they had made mistakes born of ignorance and insecurity and the desperate need to prove themselves in a world that questioned their presence. She had been them once, before the combat, before the loss, before she learned that judgment based on appearance was the luxury of people who had never been tested. You want to make this right, Elle asked quietly. Here's how. Graduate this program. Become SEAL operators. Prove that women belong here not because of quotas or political correctness, but because of competence. When you face doubt and mockery, and you will remember how you treated me. Then be better. That's how you honor what happened in here. Sloane straightened to attention. We will, Commander. I swear on everything I hold sacred we will. Good. Elle picked up her gear bag. I'll see you in the team someday, Ashcroft. All three of you. Don't make me wait too long. The helicopter waited on the tarmac rotors, already turning blades, cutting through morning air with rhythmic precision. Elle climbed aboard and strapped in. The crew chief gave her a thumbs up. The pilot began pre-flight checks. Through the window, Elle could see the training facility growing smaller as they lifted off. She could see the obstacle course where she had deliberately failed, the shooting range where she had missed targets on purpose, the showers where she had endured mockery in silence. All of it receding into memory now. All of it part of a mission that had cost her pride but saved lives. Her radio crackled. Commander, this is SEAL Team 7 Actual. Welcome back. We have mission brief in 6 hours. Target package is time sensitive. Elle smiled. Real work, not training exercises or undercover operations. The work she had been born to do. Copy Team 7. I'm on my way. Reynolds out. The helicopter banged west, flying toward the rising sun and whatever battles waited beyond the horizon. Behind her, 3 women stood watching until the aircraft disappeared from view. Ahead of her, a team of operators who trusted her with their lives. Lieutenant Commander Eleanor Grace Reynolds was going home. 13 weeks of pretending to be weak had ended. 8 years of proving her strength continued. And somewhere in the distance, in the darkness where warriors moved unseen, new threats were gathering that would require her particular skills. But that was tomorrow's fight. Today, she had won. The leak was stopped. The traitor was caught. American operators would go into combat with confidence that their secrets remained secure. Her father would have been proud, not because she had avenged his death, vengeance was not service, but because she had honored his sacrifice by protecting those who came after. By ensuring that fewer families received folded flags and empty promises. The helicopter flew on through morning light, carrying a warrior home. The desert stretched below in shades of gold and amber, beautiful and deadly, and indifferent to the human dramas played out across its face. And in a shower facility at a Naval Special Warfare Training Center, water continued to fall from corroded showerheads, where 3 women stood in silence, finally understanding what they had been too blind to see. Strength came in many forms. Courage wore many faces. And the quietest voice in the room might belong to the most dangerous person present. They would remember that lesson for the rest of their lives.